This has been very informative. I mean, I know, I mean, just the decreased footprint and the amount of infrastructure, you know, that isn't necessary. So where do you see your future? I mean, one of the things I was thinking about is, wow, can you put one of these on the back of a tow truck and, you know, run it out, you know, to maybe somebody who ran out of power and, you know, do a fast charge there. Also, other community applications, and have you done anything more targeted in disadvantaged communities?
Yes. So the Boost Charger just came out last August, and we received a lot of pre-orders for it. So most of our installs are customers that ordered well ahead of time. As far as like a mobile charger, it is a grid-tied charger. It does need a power source to operate. So we do need, you know, 240 volt or 208 volt power to operate the charger. And about the disadvantaged communities, yep, we will be seeing Boost chargers being deployed in disadvantaged communities. We are an approved vendor on the Cal EVIP program, and a lot of the site hosts who put in applications for Cal EVIP and won the Cal EVIP application are in disadvantaged communities. We'll be installing these in disadvantaged communities.
That's wonderful. Priya, you want to walk us through some of the, Patrick's been jumping in and answering questions in the chat. So you want to take a quick look at some of the chat comments and see if there's any that haven't been addressed here. I'm taking a quick look as well. Let's see, Guy, do you have more questions on the cost slide?
Judy, while Gaia is answering you, maybe they could throw in a link to the total cost of ownership studies, comparing their technology to what you have to go through to do a standard fast charger.
That's an excellent suggestion. Is that something that Patrick, you or Rob can do before our meeting's over, so we can take a look at those?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a site-by-site basis. Some sites have power, and obviously, if the site already has power, you don't have to have that upfront cost of bringing the infrastructure in. But most sites don't have power. Usually, like what would happen in the past is, you know, site host says, "Hey, I want to install a charger over here where it's convenient, where people will use it," and then they'll start moving forward in that process, and they'll realize that they don't have power at that site. They'll call they'll contact their utility. They'll get a quote on how much it costs to bring power into that site and what the time frame is, and they'll walk away from that site. It's a no-go because of the cost of bringing power and just is too expensive. So they'll choose another site where the cost of bringing power in is less expensive. But unfortunately, that site might not be optimal to install a charger. That's why you see like a lot of chargers in like not the most ideal spots. You know, they're like next to a substation, for example, where there is plenty of power, but might not be the greatest site for DC fast charging. So yeah, it's a site-by-site. It's on a site-by-site basis, and we offer solutions for that.
Great. It looks like an exciting product, Rob. Are you engaged in, or have you looked at how that might relate to apartment complexes or MUDs? Does that model fit the needs, or is that a mismatch?
For apartment complexes, I think it works well as a public charger, like down the street from an apartment complex. I mean, I guess it could. I mean, it could. The problem is like, who's going to pay for it at an apartment complex, right? So
it might be an alternative to an MUD that's looking at having to retrofit and run a series of level 2 lines out. That this might be an alternative that might be supported. And do you have any special ambient temperature requirements or limitations? I know in the valley here it gets pretty hot.
Oh yeah.
It does. starting tomorrow?
I don't know off the top of my head. We have to, we have a certain spec we had to meet to be on our RFPs. So it's within the standard of the industry is what our temperature spec is at.
I know the early DC fast chargers had tremendous problems with that, and then had high failure rates and shutdowns. So for our area, that would be a pretty important factor.
Yeah, we've had units like our first unit got launched in Lodi last August, and it was over 110. It was over 100 degrees when we launched it, and we don't have a canopy over that unit at all, so it's got direct sunlight. There is cooling systems. There's actually an air conditioning unit inside. Our batteries are air cooled, and they're always conditioned to support DC fast charging. So there's actually an air conditioning unit inside the boost charger that cools the entire system down. There's also liquid cooling for the power electronics. For certain power electronics are liquid cooled as well. So we do have cooling and heating systems for cold environments. We actually have a resistive heater on the battery component to keep that battery at the optimal temperature in cold environments.
You do have liquid cooling on parts of it. That would be pretty critical. I mean, we can have 120 degree days. 110 is, every summer is not an unlikely scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. It totally supports that.
So I've got a question for you, Rob, and a lot of it is trying to, how do we get more of these, put in place? And I'm really excited that, when I was at the county, we had a lot of issues with, having to tear up parking lots and going through landscape to be able to put that infrastructure in, and this really helped solve that problem. I'm just wondering with, the future of some of the federal and state policies and getting to carbon neutral, is BP with their relationship with like AMPM and ARCO actually, as they're going in and still putting in some of these mini marts and fueling stations, also putting in one of these just to help reduce their carbon footprint and offset some of the environmental impacts that fueling stations still have on communities?
I can't really speak for them, but I know it's a market, like it's a huge market, right? Electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging, and they see the transition happening, right? We're transitioning from fossil fuel to electrification, right? And a world where they don't have, if in California, if everyone's driving electric vehicles, then they have all these fueling stations. They need to be able to support those vehicles. So I think that's their primary motivation to transition to these EV chargers.
Well, that's a good one. Any other questions before we say thank you again to Rob? Okay, well, if you still have some more questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. And this is really exciting. And we're going to move to Todd Smith with Sacramento County. He's going to give an update on the county's climate action plan. Hopefully he's picked up a few things today that maybe the county can start pushing forward in making recommendations as folks are trying to make their environmental footprint much smaller and move away from fossil fuels. So Todd, thanks for being with us today. Take it away.
Thanks, Judy. And yes,